Karine Perset is in charge of the work of artificial intelligence policy in the OECD's Division for Digital Economy in Paris. She focuses on trends in the development and diffusion of AI, on opportunities and challenges that AI raises for public policy, and also oversees OECD.ai, the OECD's AI Policy Observatory. She was previously Senior Director and Advisor to ECAN's Governmental Advisory Committee in Los Angeles, and before that was the Counselor of the OECD's Directorate for Science, Technology and Innovation. She's Franco-American and has a dual master's degree in telecommunication and international economics from the University of Paris-Dauphine. So this first panel is going to address the national policies and international challenges, just following up from what Mr. Villani was developing. Karine Perset will first address the role of international cooperation in the field of artificial intelligence. Karine, over to you. I think that you have a presentation.
Well, good morning. Yes, thank you, and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting the OECD to participate in this important event. As Yas said, my name is Karine Perset, and I support AI policy work at the OECD. Particularly building the AI Policy Observatory. So I'm speaking in English, mais je suis en fait franco-américaine, mais mon français est un petit peu rouillé. C'est pour ça qu'on s'est mis d'accord pour parler anglais pendant cette session, pour ne pas hésiter sur certains termes dont on a l'habitude de parler en anglais. Donc, I'll go back in English. For any discussion, I'm happy to speak French. It's just that I'm used to speaking English about the OECD's work, as that's our working language. So at the core, the OECD is an intergovernmental organization that has 36 member countries. The criteria for the OECD member countries is that they have to be democracies and market economies. And so they're based in Europe, North America, some Southern American countries are members, and then in Asia, countries like Japan, Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. So we focus on economic and social policies and statistics. So our work is quite upstream in the policy-making process, as opposed to very hands-on. We're more upstream. And so it's more of a think tank type of role that we play. So I'll give a brief overview of what the OECD has been doing on AI, particularly developing the OECD AI Principles and next steps to help policymakers leverage the benefits of AI and address some of the challenges. I have some slides, and I'll present those. I'll go through those two elements: the AI principles and then the policy observatory, sort of the next steps from there. So a little bit of background: our work on AI started after a G7 meeting in Takamatsu, Japan in 2016. And so Japan really encouraged the OECD to conduct analysis on AI and organize multi-stakeholder events in 2016, 2017. And a consensus emerged from these events that high-level principles for AI were needed to provide direction and sort of to provide a broad agreement on priorities, shared priorities for international cooperation among OECD countries and several other countries that participated in these discussions, and as well as other international organizations and stakeholders such as UNESCO, of course. So in 2018, we created an expert group to propose principles for AI with members from many governments, 20 governments, business, civil society, trade unions, academia, and the technical community. And so, for example, groups like INRIA were represented, and of course the French government, and then other international organizations like the European Commission, UNESCO. And so the outcome the criteria for developing these principles were that they had to, one, facilitate innovation and trust. That was, I think, the priority for the principles. It was starting from an innovation angle and a growth and a positive aspects of this technology. Two, that these principles had to focus on features that were specific to AI, such as transparency, not sort of issues that are much broader and that predate AI. So we really wanted to stay focused because otherwise it would be too broad. And 3, the principles had to be implementable. 4, be flexible enough to stand the test of time in an area that's evolving very, very rapidly. So it's hard to predict what applications are going to emerge even tomorrow. And 5, they had to foster cooperation among stakeholders, stakeholder groups, among disciplines, and among countries. So the principles were adopted in May 2019 by the 36 OECD member countries and 6 other countries, 6 partner countries that wanted to. They're open. The adherence is open, and so they felt that these were important and adhered to them. And then in June 2019, the G20 countries committed to these same principles at their leaders' meeting in Japan as well. And so that's the principles are non-binding. I know that this is more of a legal perspective in some sense, but this is what we call soft law. It's an intergovernmental agreement, and the adherents are governments, but it's non-binding, although it represents a broad consensus, and it's a strong political commitment by OECD governments to use these principles as a common framework when they're building their national policies. And so the principle of soft law, which tends to work very well in the OECD context, is peer pressure. And so we conduct monitoring, and then every country wants to look good. So the principle is peer pressure. So this map shows you the very broad commitment to these principles, and particularly the G20 commitment was very important. At the same time, it also shows you that the need to reach out to regions like Africa, and so we're hoping that other countries will join. Some such as Egypt have indicated strong interest. They now hold the presidency of the African Union, so who knows? And also we're working with other IGOs, such as UNESCO, of course, in terms of outreach. So that, the idea is not to have OECD principles, G20 principles, UNESCO principles, is to have complementarity among these principles and agreement on what the priorities are, so we can work together in the same direction. So back to these principles, I've spoken a lot about them without saying what they are. They include 5 principles for the responsible stewardship of trustworthy AI systems that protect people and individuals. So those 5 value-based principles are aimed at people and individuals. And notably, the AI systems should, 1, benefit people and planet. That 2, they should respect human rights, democratic values, and fairness. 3, they should be transparent and explainable so that people can understand what's happening and can challenge outcomes if they need to. 4, that AI systems should be robust, secure, and safe throughout their life cycle with risk assessments managed continually. And 5, that actors developing AI systems should be accountable for their functioning in line with these principles. So some of these might seem obvious, but they're not actually obvious in terms of the legal frameworks or even the policy frameworks behind them. We don't, for example, currently have much in the way of robustness obligations in any national frameworks. And so this is the beginning to that, and robustness, of course, is very, very important. Maybe this was something that lacked in the development, for example, of the internet, where security was really an afterthought. So the principles also include 5 priority recommendations for national policies and for international cooperation. And this is to help economies and society. So this is the broader view. Economies and societies benefit from AI. And so these include, I think, pretty standard priorities, but it's a prioritization. It's not a Christmas tree. There are many more, but these is really the ones that the groups, the stakeholders participating in this process thought were the most important. And so that's investing in R&D for responsible AI, not any AI, responsible AI, both through public and private investment, ensuring that infrastructure, technologies, data, and knowledge are accessible, creating policy environments for trustworthy AI, so that's providing experimentation, policy experimentation, etc., and equipping people with the skills for AI and supporting workers to manage the transitions as labor markets get impacted. Finally, cooperating across borders and sectors to share information, develop standards, and work towards responsible AI. So the principles are beginning, and now we're really focusing on implementation of these principles and on helping countries to do this. So on the OECD front, the Policy Observatory is our next major endeavor to move from the AI principles to concrete actions and implementation. How am I doing on time? Okay, okay, thanks. So first of all, what will the observatory be? So we envisage it as a platform, a collaborative platform on AI policy that facilitates knowledge sharing, measurement and analysis for trustworthy AI. We're calling it OECD.ai, trying to be a little bit cool, sound cutting edge for an international organization. And we aim to launch this in February 2020. We envisage the core characteristics of this platform as being one, multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity, and this goes back to what Mr. Villani said, that applications in one area increasingly transfer over to other areas and can bring lessons that are relevant to other areas. So 2, that is evidence-based, and 3, that is multi-stakeholder and cooperative. So bringing together resources from all stakeholder groups and all and many different international bodies in a complementary manner. So we're structuring the observatory, which is under development right now. We have an alpha version ready, so it's not yet a beta, but it works, and it's going to be very useful, we think, for policy makers. We're structuring it around 4 main pillars. 1, the AI principles and guidance to implement these principles. 2, analysis in the policy areas impacted by AI. 3, on trends and data, and so that's an important focus for us, I'll mention later. And 4, a live repository or database of both country and stakeholder initiatives. So this first pillar, again, we're developing practical implementation guidance, and we'll be conducting monitoring of the implementation of the recommendations and explaining what each principle means in much more detail, because the Council recommendations or the AI principles are very high level and not very detailed because they're a negotiated text. And so this is really providing much more information on what does it mean, or what did the countries mean when they agreed to this text. And then examples of how to help implement these principles. In Pillar 2, this will provide analysis in AI policy areas from health to science, transportation, employment, or education. Basically, most policy areas, the OECD covers a lot of policy areas except for defense and military applications. And so this will feature the latest analytical work and research being undertaken across the OECD, but also by partner institutions like the European Commission, Science Direct, Microsoft Research, and more. And then now the third pillar is on trends and data, and this is really a key area for us. It's on the one hand OECD metrics and methodologies. So, for example, we began to look at private equity investments in AI startups, and we're now updating this data, but it illustrates the really rapid growth in AI equity investment overall that's been doubling annually and is led by the US and China with really dramatic growth on the Chinese side. So just an example of the types of data that we're preparing for this. We'll have live data on AI news as it takes place across the world, which is very interesting as well. AI policy news, of course, and then we'll have sectoral news as well. We're providing data also on AI research publications. And so this, you can see this trend over time, which is quite impressive, where you see the growth, particularly of China as of about 2006. And the growth of the yellow bubble as it catches up with the US. And then we'll also merge the European countries so that it gives a better visibility of Europe as a whole. This shows the same data from a different perspective, but it just shows kind of the research focus of various countries. And again, China is absolutely incredible in terms of its growth over the past few years. We know that, but showing it, just visualizing it, makes it more, I think, concrete. And then here we'll show things like international collaboration in research, and this was again something Mr. Villani pointed out as being very important. So this really shows what is happening today in terms of international collaboration, and then we'll also provide much more detail on collaboration intra-Europe and as it evolves, because this is live data, so it's fantastic. We'll be able to, as policies are implemented, we'll be able to see their impacts fairly quickly. Then we'll also have data on jobs and skills through a partnership with LinkedIn, which is quite interesting because on the one hand, they have access to quite a big data set on what skills do AI professionals have, and how are these skills developing over time? And on the other hand, what is the demand for AI skills on the company side or on the hiring side, and how is this evolving? And what are the growing what are the growing skills that are most in demand? And then, of course, which countries are able to fill that demand? And so, looking at the migration flows, as again Mr. Villani alluded to, there's significant migration between, let's say, Europe and the United States, which tends to attract AI talent that has, for example, been formed in Europe. And so this is very interesting to inform policies afterwards, because governments are implementing policies and having an evidence base to do so, and seeing what they want to address is just key to be able to do that productively. So this is the last pillar, and this is an important one as well, because it provides an interactive database of AI policies and initiatives from countries and other stakeholders that they share and update. And so it's quite comprehensive in terms of structuring policy initiatives by, what is the target group that they're focusing on? What is the theme on which it is? For example, building AI talent is one, or reinforcing research capacity. And so this will enable policymakers to search this database in a user-friendly manner with visualizations, etc., through country dashboards, etc., and look at what other countries are doing and compare how they're doing compared to what other countries are doing in terms of policies. And dig into this at a very granular level. So I don't know, I think I'm running out of time, but okay, I can introduce a few of the original findings from the survey, as we're just closing the survey now. And so we have some initial results. We haven't had time to go through the whole thing, but a few initial results. We have over, I think now, close to 300 individual AI policy initiatives, and users can navigate this data through country territory dashboards, through types of policy instruments, through groups targeted by a specific policy. Again, the information can be shared, updated, and compared in an interactive manner. So the idea is not to have a static database that we update once a year, is that countries, national contact points for each of the countries will update this database as they come up with new policies. Now, I think a few of the findings so this is an example of a country dashboard, but a few findings, initial findings, again, very preliminary, are that all countries are strengthening their AI research capacities. That's a top priority for all countries. Many are allocating national budgets for AI R&D. Some are creating AI research institutes or centers of excellence, and some are focusing on the development of AI standards, and some are doing all of these, of course. Regarding levels, another area of focus for many countries is developing or adapting AI systems to ensure access to technologies, data, and AI knowledge. And this includes initiatives to support SMEs throughout the AI transition, creating AI clusters or hubs, often at a metropolitan level, supporting the creation of mechanisms to access and share data, and also focusing on procurement services, procurement processes for public services that use AI, for example, in judicial systems, which have been a very controversial topic. And then next, governments are reviewing and sometimes adapting their policy regulatory frameworks, for example, for driverless cars, of course, or using regulatory sandboxes. And basically, as mentioned before, all countries are strengthening AI skills with education and training, programs offering scholarships for AI PhDs, and training programs for people who are already in the workforce, so upskilling, basically. This is quite widespread and a priority for all. Particularly, I think France is focusing on also bringing back AI talent, or at least for short periods of time, bringing back AI talent that might have emigrated overseas, often to the United States. In terms of international cooperation, we also see lots of cooperation, bilateral, multilateral, international, depending on the areas. And then maybe a couple, just two last points. It's worth noting that all the national AI strategies we've seen do prioritize the use of AI in healthcare and in transportation. So that's the one constant. And then the other sectoral priorities vary depending on the countries. And also, most countries are establishing or adapting or are adapting their governance mechanisms to ensure coordinated whole-of-government approaches to AI policy. So, for example, they're creating a specific government body to oversee the implementation of AI strategies or plans, or creating expert advisory committees, or creating ethics bodies, AI ethics bodies. And then in terms of processes to evaluate AI policies. Now, it's very early days for that, so very few have actually thought through how they're going to evaluate the implementation of their strategy. But a few countries that started earlier on have begun to evaluate the first year of implementation. So that would be Canada and the UK. So I think. Sorry for speaking so long. Thank you very much for your attention.